So now with the Gundam card game officially and completely released to us in our hands, we've now got a load of cards that we've got to build some decks out of. And there'll be some people out there that are starting their TCG lives with the Gundam card game. Have maybe picked up a starter deck or two and are thinking, okay, well, what next? This video is for you. We are going to take a look at all 4 of the starter decks and see in what ways that we can upgrade them. My name is Ben Fitzpatrick. I am a TCG caster. That just means I love talking about them. So let's do that right now. But before we get into today's video, if you do enjoy it and if you are a fan of the Gundam card game, please do go ahead and drop a like rating on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, like I know over 95% of you that watch these videos are not. Why not? It's free. If you're coming back on the regular, you might as well stick around and drop that subscription and comment down below as well with some of the constructed decks that you are taking a look at. Also, down in the description, you'll see my link tree where you can find me on other platforms such as X, where we have reached 350 followers. So thank you so much for your support over there and see me promoting and yapping about all of these videos and other things. Okay, so we have had, obviously, the 4 starter decks released now, as well as GD01 for the Gundam card game, and I got a comment and request on a video prior, which I'll pop up on the screen now, saying, why not make a video about upgrading these decks with the starter decks and GD01 both together? So I thought, sounds good, absolutely, I'll do just that. I will preface this video as well, before getting into these decks, by saying that deck building and deck construction isn't necessarily my forte. It's not my sort of initial kind of prowess when it comes to trading card games. It's one of my weaker things that I am trying to get a little bit better at. So take these deck buildings and these deck builds with a little bit of a little grain of salt as we go through them. But we're going to start off with ST01, and we're going to start off with blue and white. And blue and white is all about kind of value here and AP manipulation. So I've gone with a little bit of an AP manipulation style build here that takes advantage of those effects. So staying from the starter deck, we've got 4 copies of the Gundam LR and 3 copies of the Permit Score 6. This is also assuming that you've got 2 of these starter decks and that you've smashed them together. We're keeping the GMs, we're keeping Zawart as the 3-2 blocker, we're keeping the white base as well as the Soletta Mercury and Amuro Ray. We're keeping quite a lot here from starter deck 1, as well as the Unforeseen Incident, 3 copies of that to reduce a unit's AP by 3 in either the main or action step. In terms of cards that are being brought in from GD01, we've got the Mistral here, which is another cheap way to reduce an AP of a unit on a 1-1 body. Can also play it down on turn 1 if you're in a pinch going first, but you really most want to use this unit sort of in the mid to late game, reduce an AP of a unit, and then either clear the way of that, or if you've got a blocker in the way, just reduce the power of that blocker so that your unit isn't taking any damage in that battle step. We're bringing Gundam Faract here in as well, which during link and attack can choose a unit that gives it -2 AP, and we've got this kind of Academy sub-theme that's going on through the deck. So we've got the Soletta Mercury pilot, we've got Elan Kerez, as well as the Chuatri Panlunch here, that's the hybrid command with Iron Fisted Discipline. We've got Lefrith as a 2-4 blocker, just a beefy blocker. We've got Guel's Dilanza as a potential turn 1 play if you're in a pinch and you need to burn that EX resource straight away. Does, of course, have the Academy trait as well, so pairs nicely with the Elan Kerez and the Chuatri Panlunch, as well as the Soletta Mercury. We're also bringing in the 13th Tactical Testing Sector as one of the base cards that's being run. You'll have a look at the sort of the split in this list, and you'll notice there's only 5 bases here in this list at the moment. Still trying to figure out what the kind of ideal ratio is for all of the card types in the game at the moment. 5 bases feels like it might be 1 or 2 too few potentially here, but the 13th Tactical Testing Center is in here because activate main, you can rest the base, and if you have a friendly academy unit on the board, which we've got a lot of in the deck, you can give an enemy unit an AP reduction of 1 during the turn. So again, it's playing into this kind of AP manipulation that we've got in blue and white in particular. Unfortunately, we've got no removal pieces in the game yet that rely on AP. It's more HP related removal with things like the Witch and the Bride, which you'll notice is not included in this list. I can see an argument for bringing the Witch and the Bride in because it is such a great tempo piece, but I feel like in this deck it's just not quite helping out as much as we'd potentially like it to. We've spoken about Iron Fisted Discipline a couple of times. The command itself is main or action. Choose an enemy unit that is level 4 or lower, and it gets an AP reduction during this turn. Very, very helpful as a combat trick during the action step. And of course, again, it is that Academy trait pilot. So it could go onto something like Faract, for example, and make it a 4-4 as opposed to just a 3-4. We've also got this Elan Keres here, which is one of the few cards that does generate an all-out payoff for reducing units' AP down. If an enemy unit with 1 or less AP is in play during the action step, you can repair 1 once per turn. So the Elan Keres giving a +2/+1 boost as well to the unit that it attaches onto can be a very, very nice bit of payoff here and keeps one of those big units around. So if we're attaching it to, say, the Faract here, during Link you go ahead and swing in, the attack effect will activate and give an enemy unit -2 AP. You'll go ahead and apply that. Then you can use the action of Elan Keres potentially, if that unit is a 1 or less AP unit, to heal 1 and keep this thing nice and big and make it, again, a 5-5 this time as opposed to the potential 4-4 that we would have if we piloted with Pan Lunch here. The last card that we haven't really spoken about, that we don't know too much of, and that's new from GD01, is going to be Overflowing Affection, purely in there for some consistency. Help us draw into some of these Academy pilots, into some of these Academy units, or just as simple as to find one of our 2 LRs. There is maybe a potential and a temptation here to include some of the other white LRs, the Freedom and Justice Gundams in particular, but don't worry, we'll see those guys in a later deck build. So this is what I've conjured up for Starter Deck 1. Of course, these are just suggestions at this point. The format and the meta is only just starting to develop now that we've actually got the cards in our hands. There are going to be way smarter deck builders out there that will be working hard on this build. But this is a place to start, at the very least. We go into Starter Deck 2, which was green and blue. And in this instance, we are going to go ahead and make this a aggressive ramp style deck. We had a little bit of it in the starter deck itself with things like the Wing Gundam Bird mode, but it's really in GD01 where you start to get those extra ramp cards. Things like First Contact to be able to either place a rested resource or get an EX resource if it's activated from Burst. The Gundam Death Scythe as well, if it's paired with an Operation Meteor pilot, gets you a rested resource and then gains First Strike. These are kind of now your ways to really try and build into this aggro ramp style deck. So what you can see that we've got here, cards that have been kept from Starter Deck 2, we've still got Wing Gundam itself with the Hero Yui pilot. We've kept Peaceful Timbre in here, and this is predominantly included for the Timbre command to stop any damage from the shield area from enemy units that are level 4 or lower in the battle step. You can still use this as the pilot, as Quatre, because of Gundam Death Scythe, it's looking for an Operation Meteor pilot when paired, not when link. So Clutch Rate does still work to activate that effect and get the rested resource with the Gundam Death Scythe. We're also keeping a hold of the St. Gabriel Institute as one of our 2 bases in the deck, adding 1 shield to hand and then looking at the top 2 cards of the deck and reorganizing 1 to the top and 1 to the bottom. Either can put this down early game if you're facing a lot of aggression, because you'll notice there's not a lot of defense in this build. There's no blockers or anything like that to speak of, so your defense is primarily going to be coming from the bases. We've kept simultaneous fire in here as well, with a command hybrid with Trower Barton. That's because we're also including Gundam Heavy Arms from GD01 that is looking for Trower Barton as a link pair. Gundam Heavy Arms is during a pair, this unit gains Breach 3, so we can still hold out, but I wanted to put the Trower Barton in there, also just because the simultaneous fire can be really, really useful in some go-wide decks. If you're facing up against green-red, for example, that wants to go very, very wide, very, very quickly, if you can give one of your units Breach 3 during the battle, you can then not only deal with your opponent's board state, but also make some inroads to actually winning the game. A couple of other cards that we've got still from the starter deck. That is actually going to be it from starter deck 2 that has carried over. So a little bit lighter here in terms of cards that are still from the starter deck. Now we go into the new stuff. As mentioned, we've got the Gundam Death Scythe LR from GD01. We've got the Heavy Arms as well. I've brought Big Shenlong Gundam in. There was the potential to make it the small Shenlong Gundam, just the vanilla Breach 3 unit, I think it is, at level 4. But having played with both of them in the sealed battle, I found out that if I have the choice between the 2 of them, I'd much rather just use the bigger one. It's a higher breach unit, so if there's a base in the way, it can make a harder chunk into the base, and that attack effect to be able to clear the way of any level 3 or lower blockers that are on our opponent's board can be very, very useful indeed. We spoke about Gundam Heavy Arms briefly. We've got Duo Maxwell in here as another Operation Meteor pilot, but also links with the Gundam Death Scythe. Speaking of Operation Meteor pilots, we've got Chang Wu Fei as well here, a +2/+1 that link pairs with Shenlong Gundam and also protects some of your units during the battle step. If Breach is going activated, you're attacking with a unit with Breach, you do not receive battle damage from units with 3 or less AP. We've also got the Aksha here from GD01, the level 4 2 cost, which on deploy chooses 1 rested unit and deals a damage to it. And my thinking behind including this card is that we've got a lot of units that have Breach in the text, right? So we want to try and get that Breach activating as often as we possibly can. So with this unit here, we can deploy it, soften up a unit that we can look to attack into, attack with a Breach unit into that softened up unit, defeat it, and then get the guaranteed Breach activations. That was my kind of idea behind bringing this card in, and at 3 copies. Obviously, it kind of goes against the Operation Meteor sub-theme that we've got in this deck, but I just thought with the amount of Breach that's running around in this build, it makes sense to include it in. We've also got 2 copies of the Agama base from GD01. This is the 05 base in blue. Add 1 of your shields to hand, then choose 1 of your enemy level 3 with 3 or less HP and rest it. Again, trying to help play into that Breach package that we've got going on here and deal with any units that our opponent is either trying to protect by not attacking with it, or if there's any kind of mid-air modification shenanigans that are going on. We mentioned about the first contact. The path to victory or defeat is a very, very key card for consistency in this deck. It's one of the few instances in the Gundam card game right now of a top 5 searcher. And in other Bandai card games, like the One Piece card game, for example, top 5 searchers are absolutely crucial to the deck. So we've got this in here. Yes, it's a level 5, so you have to wait a little bit to be able to play it. But the idea here with this deck is that you're going second with it. So you're starting with that EX resource. Turn 1 in this build, unfortunately, you're passing. But on turn 2, you play the Wing Gundam Bird mode, get yourself a unit on board, keep that EX resource. Turn 3, at level 4, you're playing First Contact. And then turn 4 is when we can start to really explode. So we're taking a couple of turns off to build, but then when we get to that level 5 stage, that's when we can start going ahead and using things like the Path to Victory or Defeat, deploy heavy arms, link pair it with Trowel Barton, start getting some breach going in and attacking that way. Also important to note about the Path to Victory or Defeat is that it gets units and pilot cards. So that's why there are so many pilot cards that are in this deck, because we've got an easy way to fetch them out with this searcher. The final card that we've included in this deck, obviously being a ramp strategy, we had to include the big level 8 cost Wing Gundam 057 High Maneuver that burns every level 5 or lower unit that is on the board, and of course link pairs with the Hero UE pilot as well. So that was my thought on upgrading Starter Deck 2, really making use of that sort of ramp package that Green is looking to want to go in with here and get a lot of breach activating very, very quickly. Now we'll go into Starter Deck 3, the Zeon's Rush green-red deck, and this was one of the decks that was certainly the easiest of the 4, I think it's fair to say, to upgrade and build, because you had such a great starting foundation in the deck itself. I mean, you could have a look and see the amount of cards that have stayed here from Starter Deck 1. We've still got 4 copies of the Char Zaku 2 Ella. We've still got 4 copies of Char himself. 3 copies of the Foulmail base. I've kept 2 copies of the Sinaju in here, along with Full Frontal, but that could be up for debate, and I'll explain a little bit more in a second on that one. Still got the Goofs that deploy the tokens with them, still got Close Combat, still got Zaku 1s, as well as the Ra-C sleeves. So over half of the deck is still Starter Deck 3, and I would recommend, if you are able to, still get a hold of the structure decks, and you're still on the fence about whether you want to try and get into the Gundam card game, this will be the build that I think I would recommend. Not only for the amount of cards that stay from the 2 starter decks smashed together, but also for just the general strategy that we're going for with this deck being pure aggro. The cards that come in from GD01, I've got 3 copies of the Z Zulu, because this card is just an absolute early game bomb, being able to immediately clear the EX base in 1 attack, or deal a hefty chunk of damage into any bases that get played into the shield area, is very, very useful. I've got the Char Zaku 2 rare from GD01 in here as well, which creates a rested 3/1 token during pair and when destroyed. I've also got 3 copies of the LR Char's Gelgoog in from GD01, which activate main, can discard a Zeon or Neo Zeon unit card. If a pilot is not paired to this unit, you can choose a new type pilot that's level 3 or lower and go ahead and pair. Annoyingly, it's only looking for new type. It's not looking for cyber new type, so it doesn't work with Full Frontal. It does work with Char, however. So we still want to keep that combo going here in this deck. I've also brung the Jian into the list as well when paired with a Zeon pilot, which we've got quite a few of. You can destroy an enemy level 2 or lower blocker unit. To help facilitate that, I've got 3 copies of McQuave here, as well as another Zeon pilot, and while this unit is Zeon, it gains Breach 1. The starter deck is called Zeon's Rush, might as well take advantage of that. Final 2 cards that are coming in, we've got the Zanzibar base, which is a level 4 2 cost. On deploy, add a shield to hand. Then, if it is your turn, you can deploy a Zeon unit card that is level 4 or lower from your hand. So again, cheating another body out into play. And then the Command Pilot Hybrid with Assault on Torrington Base and Yonam Kirks here. Assault on Torrington Base is an action. Choose 2 friendly units. They get +1 AP during this turn. Very, very helpful if we need to potentially break a board at all. And then the Yonam Kirks is just another cheap Xeon pilot that we could potentially look to pair. So overall, this is just swarm, get a load of units into play quite quickly, and overwhelm our opponent here. I stuck with the Xeon package as opposed to going into Zaft, purely because the Xeon is what we are starting with those structure decks. Of course, there is the Zaft combo that can play out a load of different bodies from the LRs, but we're talking about upgrading the starter decks here, and when we've got such a strong package already in the deck itself, we might as well just add to that. I mentioned about the possibility of not including the Sinaju and the full frontal. That's primarily because I'm a little bit hasty and a little bit hesitant and thinking that that's maybe a bit too slow. They are both level 6 cards, so you have to wait a little while to be able to get those units out onto the board. By that point, we kind of wanted to have finished the game, or have at least gotten very, very close to it. So that's why I've only gone with a 2-2 split here with the Sinaju and the full frontal, because at worst case scenario, these cards are going to look to be your closers. Deploy the Sinaju onto the board, immediately link pair it with the full frontal. You'll get the 2 when paired effect, so full frontal will be able to get a Neo Xeon or Xeon unit card that is level 4 or lower into the board from hand. So we could chain that with, say, the Goof, full frontal, when paired effect into the Goof, Goof effect, get ourselves a token. And then the Sinaju can destroy or deal damage into an enemy unit if this destroys an enemy shield area card with battle damage, which is quite likely considering this gets high maneuver when it is paired. But like I say, this is more of a kind of worst case scenario / finish the game style card. You really want to be putting on that pressure early and consistently with the majority of the units in this deck. It's one of the rare examples, I think, of where you actually want to go first with a deck in the Gundam card game. It seems like the general consensus is that you want to go second so that you get that EX resource. This might be the rare time where I actually say going first might be the better play, just so that you can get that early aggression onto board quickly with something like the Zaku 2 or the Drasi sleeves. We're playing 8 1-drops at level 1 in this deck for that very reason. Although I would listen to arguments that say otherwise. So that is my take on Starter Deck 3's upgrade. That means we've just got one more to go ahead and talk about. And that is going to be Starter Deck 4, the red and white deck. And this was one of the more difficult ones to try and go ahead and upgrade, but I think I've created something a little bit interesting and unique. Just like the last deck, we'll talk about quickly the cards that have stayed from the structure decks. We're keeping 4 copies of the Ale Strike, as well as 4 copies of Kira Yamato to link pair with it. We've also got Strike Gundam himself, only 3 copies here. On deploy is a draw 1 and discard 1, so a little bit of consistency there. We're keeping Archangel as one of the base cards, and that's going to give a little bit of a hint as to what we're trying to do with this deck, because activate mate once per turn, you can pay 2 and choose a friendly unit with blocker and set it as active. The last cards that are staying are going to be 4 copies of the Mobius and 3 copies of Striker Pack. This might need to come down, however. We will look a little bit further when we go into the deck. So now about the cards that have come in from GD01, and you'll notice it's a lot. This is probably the deck that is bringing the most, alongside the ramp deck from Starter Deck 2, in from GD01. So we're bringing in Strike Rouge, which activate main once per turn. You can pay 1 resources and reactivate 1 of your blockers. Gundam Lafrith comes in as a 2/4 blocker. Launcher Strike Gundam comes in as a 3/4 blocker. And you might be able to start to see the pattern here. We are playing a Blockers Matters style deck here, and using cards like the Archangel, like the Strike Rouge, and Mid-Air modifications to be able to swing with them and reactivate them so that they're still here with us when we defend. This is also the deck that's bringing, I think, the most legend rares into the deck from one color in GD01. We're running a 3/3 line of Freedom and Justice Gundam here. Freedom Gundam with blocker during pair once per turn. When you pair with this unit or one of your white units, which we're running a lot of, you can choose an enemy unit and give it minus AP2 during turn. We've also then got Justice Gundam, which on deploy creates that Triple Ship Alliance blocker token, and during pair when attacking, can make that Triple Ship Alliance unit token go ahead and swing on the turn it is deployed. And remember, it's a blocker, so we could reactivate it with Archangel and Strike Rouge here. We've spoken about mid-air modifications. Choose a rested unit with blocker, set it as active. Also does the same thing to activate through burst. We've got Naval Bombardment, which boosts up one of our blocker units' AP by 3 in the action step. We've got Battle of Aces, which can burn for 3 on a damaged enemy unit, or burn for 2 if it activates through the burst. We've got the Mining Asteroid Palau here, as just a vanilla 06 base with defense. And then again, more copies of the Assault on Torrington base with the Yonam Kirk's pilot attached to it. We're most likely going to use this for the Yonam Kirk's pilot, because you'll notice there's not a lot of pilots that are in this deck. Only 6 when you take into account the Kira Yamato and the Yonam. And we've got 2 units here that are specifically 3 units with the Freedom Gundam that are specifically asking for Kira when we go ahead and look for our link pairs. I did have a good think about maybe running Athronzala in this deck to help link pair with the Justice Gundam, but I wasn't a massive fan of the Athronzala pilot. It felt like that this deck, for what it's trying to do, it needs a lot for the engine to try and work. Why I also was very keen on trying to put Choo Choo's Demi Trainer in here to help draw one, discard one, as well as an Overflowing Affection, try and help get us towards these engine pieces. A bit more of a sort of combo lock deck that we've got going on here than any of the others. This, I think, does also need a little bit more refinement. I will be completely upfront and honest here. I'm not sure whether this is going to be the best way of playing red and white in this deck. I just saw the blocker keywords, had a good time with mid-air modifications in the release event for GD01, which if you missed that video, link in the corner of the video with the iCard so you can see my gameplay and experience from that. This deck might need a little bit more work, might need a little bit more ratio tweaking, but I think this is one of the more interesting and fun decks out of the 4 that I could have possibly built. So, those are the 4 decks that I would look to build. What ones would I recommend from top down if I were to bring this to a new player? As I said, number 1 would have to be the Zeon's Rush, would have to be red-green. Aggro, it's a nice and easy play style. Just go quickly into the shield area. Don't mind too much about what your opponent is doing on the base or on their opponent's board area, and you've got a lot of cards that are staying from the starter deck. I'd then maybe move to starter deck 1, purely because blue-white is proving to be one of the best color combinations in the game at the moment, and you're getting a lot of value here with your units, commands, and pilots that are on the board. So this will probably be second. Third would probably be the ramp deck. It's a little bit more fragile, but if you can get that ramp going nice and early and nice and quickly, it could be very, very good. Although I think it might be paired a little bit better with white to help you get through that early game a little bit better until you're into your late game bombs with the ramp. And then fourth and finally would have to be this Blockers Matters style deck. I think it's a fun idea, but I think it needs a little bit more refinement and a little bit more time in the oven to cook, potentially. But with all that said and done, it's going to be over to you. What do you think of the decks that I have built here today? Do you think that there's anything that needs tweaking here? I know that that's absolutely a yes. If so, what cards would you suggest to remove or add if you are suggesting this to a newer player into the Gundam card game? If you have enjoyed the video, however, please go ahead and drop a like rating on it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn those notifications on so you do not miss a video as well. That's going to bring an end to today's video. I hope that you have enjoyed. Thank you for watching. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Goodbye for now.